Good evening and welcome back to another episode of The Longing, where today we are going to continue to read The Sleeper Awakes. And we might, if we get to a good point, roll back the time, because it is getting a little bit close at this point. So, depending on if that falls today, we may do that. Otherwise it'll be tomorrow or another day before the time does run out. But anyway, let's get going. They all look young. Down there I should be visibly the oldest man, and in my own time I should have passed as middle-aged. They are young. There are few old people in this class in the work cities. How is that? Old people's lives are not so pleasant as they used to be, unless they are rich to hire lovers and helpers. And we have an institution called euthanasia. Z. Ah. That euthanasia, said Graham. The easy death. The easy death. It is the last pleasure. The euthanasia company does it well. People will pay the sum. It is a costly thing, long beforehand. Go off to some pleasure city, and return impoverished and weary. Very weary. There is a lot left for me to understand, said Graham after a pause. Yet I see the logic of it all. Our array of angry virtues and our sour restraints was the consequence of danger and insecurity. The Stoic, the Puritan, even in my time, were vanishing types. In the old days, man was armed against pain. Now he is eager for pleasure. There lies the difference. Civilization has driven pain and danger so far off for well-to-do people. And only well-to-do people matter now. I've been asleep 200 years. For a minute they leant on the balustrading, following the intricate evolution of the dance. Indeed, the scene was very beautiful. Before God, said Graham suddenly, I would rather be a wounded sentinel freezing in the snow than one of these painted fools. In the snow, said Asano, one might think differently. I am uncivilized, said Graham, not heeding him. That is the trouble. I am primitive, Paleolithic. Their fountain of rage and fear and anger is sealed and closed. The habits of a lifetime make them cheerful and easy and delightful. You must bear with my 19th century shocks and disgusts. These people, you say, are skilled workers and so forth. And while these dance, men are fighting. Men are dying in Paris to keep the world, that they may dance. Asano smiled faintly. For that matter, men are dying in London, he said. There was a moment's silence. Where do these sleep? Asked Graham. Above and below. An intricate warren. And where do they work? This is the domestic life. You will see little work tonight. Half the workers are out or under arms. Half these people are keeping holiday. But we will go to the workplaces if you wish it. For a time Graham watched the dancers, then suddenly turned away. I want to see the workers. I have seen enough of these, he said. Asano led the way along the gallery across the dancing hall. Presently they came to a transverse passage that brought a breath of fresher, colder air. Asano glanced at this passage as they went past, stopped, went back to it, and turned to Graham with a smile. Here, sire, he said, is something. Will be familiar to you at least. And yet. But I will not tell you. Come. He led the way along a closed passage that presently became cold. The reverberation of their feet told that this passage was a bridge. They came into a circular gallery that was glazed in from the outer weather, and so reached a circular chamber which seemed familiar, though Graham could not recall distinctly when he had entered it before. In this was a ladder, the first ladder he had seen since his awakening, up which they went, and came into a high, dark, cold place, in which was another almost vertical ladder. This they ascended, Graham still perplexed. But at the top he understood, and recognized the metallic bars to which he clung. He was in the cage under the ball of St. Paul's. The dome rose but a little way above the general contour of the city, into the still twilight, and sloped away, shining greasily under a few distant lights, into a circumambient ditch of darkness. Now there's a word I've not seen. Out between the bars he looked upon the wind-clear northern sky, and saw the starry constellations all unchanged. Capella hung in the west, Vega was rising, and the 7 glittering points of the Great Bear swept overhead in their stately circle about the pole. He saw these stars in a clear gap of sky. To the east and south, the great circular shapes of complaining wind-wheels blotted out the heavens, so that the glare about the council house was hidden. To the southwest hung Orion, showing like a pallid ghost through a tracery of ironwork and interlacing shapes above a dazzling coruscation of lights. A bellowing and siren screaming that came from the flying stages warned the world that one of the aeroplanes was ready to start. He remained for a space, gazing towards the glaring stage. Then his eyes went back to the northward constellations. For a long time he was silent. "This," he said at last, smiling in the shadow, "seems the strangest thing of all. To stand in the dome of St. Paul's and look once more upon these familiar, silent stars." Thence Graham was taken by Asano along devious ways to the great gambling and business quarters, where the bulk of the fortunes in the city were lost and made. It impressed him as a well-nigh interminable series of very high halls, surrounded by tiers upon tiers of galleries, into which opened thousands of offices, and traversed by a complicated multitude of bridges, footways, aerial motor rails, and trapeze and cable leaps. And here, more than anywhere, the note of vehement vitality, of uncontrollable hasty activity, rose high. Everywhere was violent advertisement, until his brain swam at the tumult of light and colour, and babble machines of a peculiarly rancid tone were abundant and filled the air with strenuous squealing and an idiotic slang. "Skin your eyes and slide," "Gehoop bonanza," "Gollipers, come and hark." These are nonsense words. The place seemed to him to be dense with people, either profoundly agitated or swelling with obscure cunning. Yet he learnt that the place was comparatively empty, that the great political convulsion of the last few days had reduced transactions to an unprecedented minimum. In one huge place were long avenues of roulette tables, each with an excited, undignified crowd about it. In another, a yelping babble of white-faced women and red-necked, leathery lunged men bought and sold the shares of an absolutely fictitious business undertaking, which, every 5 minutes, paid a dividend of 10% and cancelled a certain proportion of its shares by means of a lottery wheel. These business activities were prosecuted with an energy that readily passed into violence, and Graham, approaching a dense crowd, found at its centre a couple of prominent merchants, in violent controversy, with teeth and nails on some delicate point of business etiquette. Something still remained in life to be fought for. Further, he had a shock at a vehement announcement in phonetic letters of scarlet flame, each twice the height of a man, that "We assure the proprietor, we assure the proprietor." "Who's the proprietor?" he asked. "You." "But what do they assure me?" he asked. "What do they assure me? Didn't you have assurance?" Graham thought. "Insurance? Yes, insurance. I remember that was the older word. They are insuring your life. Dozens of people are taking out policies. Myriads of lions are being put on you. and further on other people are buying annuities. They do that on everybody who is at all prominent. Look there. And with that, we come to the end of the episode. So I will say thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon or night. No matter what time of day it is, I hope you all have a wonderful one of it. And as always, we will be back tomorrow for more of The Longing. Goodbye.